Now, what then happened was, for the reasons I had advanced before, private sector players were unable to actually source forex at 197 naira to the dollar, and therefore couldn't establish lines of credit and couldn't import. So NMPC had the sole responsibility, almost the sole responsibility for providing all the volumes in the marketplace. Today's pricing is based on a snapshot of the current cost of actually importing that product if you went to secondary sources outside the CBN to buy your forex. And that's why we have arrived at a number that has enabled us, or enabled government to establish that band of 135 to 145 as the pricing range for anybody who was importing into the country. Yeah. So, and if you go to the PPPA template, you'll see all the line items, you'll see the breakdown of how that pump price was arrived at.
Okay.
Before the phone call came in, we were talking about transportation. Yeah. And why should government be paying for me to transport? I'm a private businessman. Why should government be paying for me to transport my goods to my market? They don't pay for the tomato seller.
PEF is actually self-funding. So if you review the template, the pricing build-up for the new price, you would see, and that has been the case historically, that there is a provision in the pump price build-up for PEF, both for local deliveries, which you will see as the NTA portion, and you'll also see a bridging fund, a bridging allowance portion. So in the 145, that's paid for already.
So how does the PF generate the money it uses to pay for this bridging and transportation? That's what we're asking.
So the companies that actually import and sell the product remit the funds to PEF, depending on whether you're surplus to the fund or your
okay, so deficit. What do you mean remit the funds?
Because each time you buy a liter of the pump, the PF portions are in that pump price build-up in the 145. So the companies, the entities that actually import and sell the fuel recover those funds. So they pay the transporters and then remit the surplus to. So
in other words, Nigerians are the ones paying for that transportation.
The motoring public, the customers who buy the fuel. It's in the pump price build-up. Yes.
So that was what subsidy was paying for before. Part of what subsidy was paying for before.
Subsidy was subsidizing, the subsidy you're referring to, which was managed by PPPA, was subsidizing the landing cost, the cost of importing the product into Nigeria.
So who is bearing that cost now with this new regime?
With today's pump price build-up, there's no subsidy element in it.
Okay, let's bring in some legal things here. Mr. Femi Falana, in a statement on Thursday, said that the hike is contrary to a promise made by the president to Nigerian masses during campaigns for elections. He also said by deregulating the downstream, or partially deregulating, as you said, the downstream sector. We'll still come back to the deregulation question. The federal government is disobeying a court judgment obtained by late human rights lawyer Bamidele Aturu against the government, in a suit marked FHC/ABJ/CS. He said the court had declared as unlawful the deregulation of the downstream sector because it was contrary to the combined provisions of the Price Control Act and the Petroleum Act.
I'm not a lawyer, and I couldn't comment on this particular question. This review was driven by a need to stop the suffering of Nigerians, because we had seen since the third quarter of 2015, with pain, the experience of people who went to filling stations to buy petrol, PMS. It was particularly painful to see people queuing at service stations for, in some cases, overnight, just to be able to access the pump to buy fuel. And as you went around the country, prices varied from 150 to 300. So this singular action has been designed to correct the anomaly and confront the change, the challenge we had, which was primarily access to forex at 197 naira to the dollar.
When you say to stop the suffering, have you gone back to look at the effect of this? Just a few days ago, that the price was changed. Have you checked out the effect of it in the market across, not just at the pump price?
We're monitoring that on a daily basis.
Did you notice also that almost every other thing has gone up in price?
Ultimately, First and foremost, if and I've said this time and time again, before now, even though the official price was 86.50, Nigerians were paying between 150 to 300 at the pump, depending on, which part of the country you were. Secondly, what this would enable us to achieve is, of course, to encourage private sector participation. That should improve fuel supplies around the country. And we expect that market forces would play increasingly. You'll see competition come to play. We've been witnesses to a few years ago when there was so much product in the market that people started selling PMS at the pump below the official price or what PPPA had communicated at the time. So we expect to see that happen at some stage.
But okay,
is this a short-term solution, or this is for the long haul?
Well, the price modulation strategy is that periodically we'll review the pump prices based on the market economic realities at the time. So we'll continue to monitor the fundamentals, the variables within the pump price build-up. But those ultimately will determine, like forex rates, like the international pricing for refined products and so on, would ultimately determine what people pay at the pump.
The question, the other question is now that you're looking at every product imported, the cost of importing the products and all that, what will be the price difference between products imported and products refined here?
Locally.
The refineries today buy their crude at import parity, at international pricing. So we'd expect
they
that...
buy?
Yes.
I thought they were allocated...
Well, they pay.
Over
They
barrels.
get allocated crude, but that's for a fee. So ultimately, we have a responsibility to remit the full value to the Federation account.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, we expect that the refineries would sell their product to the Nigerian people at a price.
1 second. Oh, just 1 second.
Yeah.
They're buying the crude at
From
the
themselves.
international price.
From
That's what
themselves.
you say. And they have to remit that money to the Federation account.
Yeah.
Okay. But when they finish refining, there is no cost of importing it into Nigeria. Yeah. So that cost is taken out.
It's just transportation.
It's just transportation from the refinery to the
depot,
or wherever they're supposed to go to. So why would it still be costing the same as that which is imported and then transported from the ports to the depots?
Also, first of all, there's a refining margin. So refineries would, in determining the price levels that they sell their product, first of all, recover their costs. Pay for the crude, recover their costs. And that ultimately would determine how much they sell to the buyers at the refinery gate. Because they are not retailing. The price we're actually discussing today is a retailing price, the 145. So the refineries will sell at the gate, and whoever buys, any entity that buys from the refineries will then go to the market to sell to you and I at a price that is either consistent with, if today most people will price at 145, but over time we expect to see competition and market forces play. People will go out there and compete and sell below.
But have you also noticed that between that Wednesday or thereabout that it was announced and today, a lot of people are selling above the cap of 145. Someone tweeted that he bought at 197 naira around Alakbere.
Okay.
Okay. This one says I bought at 160 last night.
Yeah. Okay. These are early days. The first thing to correct is the supply-demand imbalance, and this is the point I made at the beginning. Now, this template or this pump price build-up would encourage private sector people to import, which means rapidly we expect to see, a step increase, a step change in the supply situation. So it's not just the NNPC barrels or the NNPC volumes. We expect to see stakeholders in the industry. Any Nigerian entity willing to import PMS today can bring in PMS. So once we correct,
take some time, won't it?
Once we correct the supply-demand imbalance, which is what creates the arbitrage, which is what creates the difference between the official price and the unauthorized or unofficial pricing that you sometimes would find out that those prices would drop off. So for these first few days, it's not unusual because What we are trying to correct is a situation where historically, or in recent times, NNPC has been the supplier of last resort, has accounted for over 90% of the supplies. So prices will adjust.
Let me take you back a bit. Let me take you back a bit. Back to the refineries. The refineries have not been privatized. They still belong to government. And you say that the crude oil has to be paid for. So government is buying crude oil from itself and paying for it.
NNPC is a corporation on itself. It's a separate entity. It's not the federal government of Nigeria.